To the Point with your host, News Channel 5's Kelly Dunn.
These are just some of the Republicans you could be seeing in Florida. The state looks to be a major battleground in their presidential primary, and there is no clear favorite. Good morning and welcome to the Point. When it comes to presidential politics for Republicans, Florida is the place to be. The Republicans will be having their primary contest in the winter and their national convention in Tampa next summer. And here to talk about what we can expect is Palm Beach County Republican Party Chairman Sid Dinerstein. And Sid, it's always nice to have you with us. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for allowing me to come back. We were here twice in the fall, and you guys do a great job.
Well,
let me add to your opening that in the week of September 22nd, we're having our Republican Party of Florida straw poll up in Orlando with a nationally televised debate, not on your networks, with all the major candidates. And that will be one of the first indicators of where the country is a few months from now.
And there are a lot of candidates, and that brings us to our first comment here on To the Point. You know, you hear a lot of times that Republicans don't have that strong candidate at this point. What do you say to that, Sid?
Actually, I get that all the time, and the first thing I say to that is rule number one in politics. Elections are referenda on the incumbent. And this is very good news, because this incumbent's not getting a second term. Deservedly so. So almost anybody who is the head of our ticket will be the next president of the United States of America.
Let's do a little handicapping. I'll name the candidates. You tell us their strong and their weak points. And let's begin first with Mitt Romney. Now, he is the former governor of Massachusetts, came in second in the Republican primary in 2008 in Florida. What do you think about Romney's chances?
Well, the good news, first off, he is, in every poll, he's the leader. All right? That's number one. Number two, when you talk about the best and the brightest, he is that. The man's brilliant and accomplished. So he looks like a president. He's got all that going for him.
So what was the problem the last time with Mitt Romney?
The same problem this time is that he has convinced Republicans that he does not have a strong set of personal beliefs about issues of governance. He's been on both sides of major social issues. And the Achilles heel, we knew it when he did it, is Romneycare in Massachusetts. It is so similar to Obamacare. And since it's already been in there, they already have higher prices for their insurance and longer waiting times to see their doctors, which is what state-run insurance always does. So Republicans get very nervous about putting Romney up, because one of our big issues and big platform issues is the repeal of Obamacare. And how are you going to do it if the guy who's president had a similar program?
Yet I know you think he's going to be up in the top three, so we'll continue on down our list. What about former House Speaker Newt Gingrich? He kind of stumbled early on criticizing his fellow Republicans. What are Gingrich's chances?
Gingrich, first off, Newt falls into that category of really bright people. He's got a brain on steroids. I mean, he comes up with new ideas by the minute. He just goes and goes and goes. He was our Lincoln Day speaker. The man transfixes 600 people in the audience with the stuff that he can think about. Having said that, he brings a lot of personal baggage, and we, the Republicans, are not looking for a campaign that becomes about our candidate. We want a campaign that's about President Obama and his long list of failures as president. We don't want it to be turned on to, say, Newt Gingrich and personal problems he's had in his life.
Well, and I mean, is there a difficulty to relate to someone like him when you're talking, $500,000 Tiffany rings and this sort of thing? I mean, is that the disconnect, you think, between the average American?
Yes, but that doesn't bother me a whole lot, because there's a disconnect between every president and the average American, because presidents are not average Americans. So it's not that. That's more for the media. But the issue about his marriages, he's been here a long time. If there's one thing we learned this past year, right here in the state of Florida, we want new faces, and he is not that. And that's going on all across the country.
Tim Pawlenty, he already made a stop in South Florida just last week, and he is the former governor of Minnesota. Tell us about Pawlenty and, from your vantage point, his chances.
If Rick Perry does not get into the race, that's the governor of Texas, if Rick Perry does not get into the race, Tim Pawlenty is almost a certain final three candidate. He has a fabulous record of the governor as the governor of Minnesota, did all the stuff that the country needs and did it already. Took on the unions. Minnesota's a liberal state. He shut down the spending. He lowered the taxes. He appointed conservative judges in a state that didn't know what a conservative judge looked like. He has a very, very fine record. He's not particularly well known. And there's that whole group of governors. When I would talk, I have my five. Pawlenty, Mitch Daniels, Rick Perry, Bobby Jindal, and whoever my fifth was. And my point is, if one of them comes out, and only one, they get a large amount of support and money. If there's two of them, like Rick Perry, then all of a sudden it gets much harder.
Another name I don't think a whole lot of people are familiar with is Jon Huntsman, the former Utah governor. He served as ambassador to China for President Obama. He's doing something unusual. He's setting up a national campaign headquarters in Orlando.
Well, this is a good thing. It's a great city.
Right, true.
You know, I get there all the time. Having said that, what he brings is money. And, of course, if you're governor of Utah, you've done good things because it's an all-Republican state, so you actually get to be fiscally responsible and not have to fight those battles. Having said that, here's his negative. His negative, he runs around the country like John McCain used to, saying, oh, I can't wait to reach across the aisle to those Democrats. And the last thing this country needs is a Republican president reaching across to those Democrats who gave us Obamacare, who want to give us cap and trade, who have burdened our children with an additional $5 trillion of debt that they can't possibly pay. We need someone who has a strong conviction, strong belief in the Constitution, strong conservative values, and he comes off as soft.
For someone with little name recognition like Huntsman here in Florida, what about Sarah Palin? Do you think she's going to run?
If I had to guess, I say no. I say no because she's very bright. She knows that her negatives are high. And once again, like Newt, if Sarah Palin were to get in the race and become our nominee, the media and the Democrats would turn this into a referendum on Sarah Palin, which is what we don't want. We want a referendum on Barack Obama. We want the country to say, Barack Obama, 4 more years or not. The Sarah Palin candidate in the race is Michelle Bachmann, a newer name, tax attorney. Great stuff. Worked on a kibbutz in Israel where the president refuses to visit. She's bright. She's articulate. I hosted her here, right here in West Palm Beach about a month ago. She has 5 kids of her own and 23 foster kids. She is one of the most extraordinary women in the country. And, of course, that means the media will go after her like they did with Sarah Palin. But I see Michelle Bachmann staying in the race a long time because she's the Tea Party candidate.
I think the media is going to go after everyone. Democrat, Republican, everybody, and especially...
Well, they haven't in the past.
Well, all right, well, that's where we will disagree. But give us your top 3 then. Okay, so we know Pawlenty is one of your top 3.
I think Romney, Pawlenty, and Michelle Bachmann live to fight another day over and over again, but that's still predicated on other people not getting in. Rick Perry affects the Pawlenty race. Sarah Palin affects the Bachmann race.
What makes Florida unique when it comes to presidential primary and politics?
Florida's unique because, number one, we sort of look like America, only upside down. Our liberals are in the South, and our conservatives are in the North. But otherwise, we look like America. We have people from all over the country. We're the first large state that's going to do a primary.
Right, but Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina will probably all be before us.
Oh, they will. We're already fighting with the RNC. We don't even have a primary date. It'll most likely be very close to the end of February, but we'll be the first really large state, and we're a winner-take-all primary state. That's important.
You know, Governor Rick Scott and the legislature approved the change, which is allowing a reduction in the amount of time for early voting. Certainly Democrats are screaming about this one, saying you're trying to limit the votes. What do you say?
I say that Democrats gave us ACORN. And from the day they gave us ACORN, they made it clear that this state needed electoral reform. So this is electoral reform, and it came in a number of ways to keep rogue groups like ACORN from perverting the election process. And quite frankly, I have no sympathy for what I call the League of Women Democrats, because they gave up their nonpartisanship so many years ago that I don't really care if they do less registration, because they're not registering people equally.
But what about just the convenience for regular citizens?
If you read the legislation, it varies with the county. And in our county, we lose little or no hours. We get to do the nights. And it varies with the county based on population. What you have a lot of counties with small population who are running too many hours and spending too much money for 1 or 2 extra voters. Whereas down here, we'll have almost all our hours that we always had. We'll run into the nights, and it'll accommodate all the people. This is not about that. This was getting people like ACORN out of the electoral system.
So are you ready for this upcoming year?
You know, in my job, I was in Lake Wales last night speaking before a Republican group.
Right.
When I got involved in local politics about 15 years ago, it was sort of like a couple of months every 2 years. You really got going.
Not now.
No, this is, politics is the national pastime. And those of us who have the honor of leading large county parties, you know, get to do it all the time. So the good news is I love it. I was on the phone 2 hours ago with the Associated Press out of Washington. It was almost funny. He called to have this same discussion. So we'll see what he writes.
Well, we'll be speaking again in the future, I'm sure. Sid
Well,
Dinerstein, thank you very much. All right, we'll be back with our political roundtable. It's coming up next. Now for our roundtable with News Channel 5 political analyst and coordinator of the American Studies program at Lynn University, Robert Watson, and Brian Crowley, author of CrowleyPoliticalReport.com. Thanks, guys, for being here.
Pleasure.
First, do you want to respond to something Sid said? I know you're
well,
eager to get in there.
Sid is never short of strong opinions.
This is true.
He's a ferocious advocate for his point of view. A point of view that I think, if you looked at closely over the years, changes with the election cycle. I suspect that some of the candidates that he was somewhat harsh about this time, he might have been less harsh when they were running previously. But that's Sid.
Well, you know, Sid is the chair of the party, and he has to be a strong advocate for the party, and he's a very good advocate for the party, and I think his analysis of all the Republican candidates was pretty close. What I have to say, though, is the criticism of the League of Women Voters. I've been a professor for 20 years in several different states. I've worked with the League of Women Voters for 20 years, for 11 years here in South Florida with our own local Palm Beach, Broward County, state of Florida. Every year they come on the campus and register students. They work doggedly. They're objective. They register everyone. They register equally across party lines.
And yet he calls them the League of Women Democrats.
Republicans.
Yeah, they have worked doggedly on campus. So I have to just defend the League of Women Voters.
All right, let's move on to some polls, some encouraging news for President Obama. Right now, let's take a look. When Florida voters were asked if he should be re-elected, half said yes. Now, that same poll, or another poll rather, in Quinnipiac, about the same time last month, more than half said no. Is this the bounce back from the bin Laden effect? And
sure.
The
you know,
rebound from that?
obviously there was some help with the killing of Osama bin Laden. These polls fluctuate a lot. I think that he may have been helped a little bit with the Paul Ryan Medicare plan. I think that a lot of older voters who are already on Medicare and those that are approaching Medicare, as much as they might on one level say, golly shucks, it needs some changes, they worry a lot that these changes are going to have a serious impact on them. And the Ryan plan, at least the Democrats have done a pretty good job of portraying the Ryan plan as being this draconian change to Medicare, and as we saw in the election in New York last week, that issue alone helped take out the Republican candidate in that seat.
Yeah, District 26, this is one of the most solidly Republican districts in the country. country. The previous congressman, Mr. Lee, was the one who took his shirt off and went on Craigslist looking for a date, even though he was a married family values politician. So there was a special election there. And in many ways, this was the first election of 2012. And the Democrats won a seat they shouldn't have even been competitive in, but they won it because people were concerned that the Republicans under the Ryan plan are effectively eliminating what we know as Medicare. And there's no way someone who's 75, 85 is going to get private insurance, and a couple $1,000 voucher is simply not going to pay for your health care. But if I may, the poll in Florida regarding Obama, regarding Rick Scott, it's way too early. No one is paying attention. The joke in presidential politics is don't even look at a poll until about 3 or 4 weeks before the election. There's the famous Chicago newspaper with Truman holding up the picture. Dewey defeats Truman. They stopped polling days before that election because everybody knew Dewey would win in 48, and of course, it didn't happen.
You know, in the Quinnipiac poll last week, they also showed that Rick Scott had a favorable rating of 29%, which is incredibly low for a governor. In fact, it was the lowest favorable rating for a governor in the country, incredibly low for a governor who's been in office 5 months. And, you know, today it doesn't necessarily say anything about next year, but Rick Scott can't stay at really low numbers like that and help his party win the 29 electoral votes in Florida.
That's actually what we're going to get to in our next segment. So we're going to get right to that poll, show them the numbers coming up. A leading Florida politician looking at those sinking poll numbers. More on that in a moment. Governor Rick Scott is finishing off his first legislative session and his first budget, but a new poll shows his popularity rating is falling. In a Quinnipiac University poll, only 29% of registered voters say they approve of the way he's handling his job. 57% disapprove. And Republicans seem to be a little disappointed. Only 51% of registered Republicans approve of the way Rick Scott is doing his job. So how do we interpret these numbers in this poll?
Well, first off, it's not uncommon for any incumbent politician to see his or her numbers drop. But what is uncommon is the degree to which Rick Scott's numbers have plummeted, and this quickly. This is really quite something. Just a couple of months out of being inaugurated. Plus, Florida's drifted to becoming a Republican state. He has comfortable majorities in the state legislature in both houses. This is really something. I think it raises the question. Rick Scott will probably not be able to help the Republicans carry the state of Florida next year. Now, Florida is the most important state in presidential politics because the 3 states larger than Florida, California, New York, and Texas, are not in play. We know California and New York are going to vote Democratic. We know Texas is going Republican, no doubt about it. So Florida is the 4th largest state, is the biggest swing state. It really benefits a party to have your person sitting in the governor's office. They can help in so many ways that I'm not going to get into. But with Scott this toxic or radioactive, if I'm advising Tim Pawlenty or Mitt Romney, and if they're coming to Florida, I say, do not stand on stage and say, Rick Scott's my friend, and shake his hand. The same way at the end of the Bush years, the Republicans were running away from him. In 2010, Democrats were running away from Obama. Right now, Rick Scott is toxic. It allows Barack Obama to come into Florida and say, do you really want your governor and your party focusing on droopy drawers and bills that say you can't have sex with animals and all the other crazy stuff that was pushed through and discussed? So Rick Scott is a potential liability for the Republican Party, and Florida is where the road to the White House goes through Florida.
Well, I mean, in some fairness to Rick Scott, we don't know where he's going to be a year from now. The Floridians may love him and maybe hoisting him on their shoulders.
Pigs may fly,
and dancing through the streets with him. But, looking at things today, which is all we can do, it looks pretty bad. For the past 4 or 5 months, one of the themes of some of the stuff that I've been writing on CrowleyPoliticalReport.com is that, these guys seem to be tone deaf in how to relate to individual Floridians. He spends a lot of his time simply hanging around Tea Party folks. And, last week I raised the issue, is Governor Rick Scott the governor and the leader of the Florida Republican Party, or is he the leader of the Florida Tea Party? And I'm starting to think he thinks more about the Tea Party than he does the Republican Party. And you have to wonder how that's going to play in the election next year, because that's one of the battles within the Tea Party now, even in their presidential field, with the Michelle Bachmans and the Sarah Palins, who will play strongly with the Tea Party, and the Mitt Romneys and some of the other candidates who don't play as well with the Tea Party. So it's an interesting show that we're seeing here in Florida and on the larger national stage as well, and we still don't know how it's going to play out.
I agree completely.
interesting.
In fact, if you look at that, the Democrats always run to the left in the primary, the Republicans run to the right in the primary to get their base. But then you have to tack back to the center in the general election. The Republican Party here in Florida and nationally, especially if Bachmann jumps in and with Trump still being visible, has drifted so far to the right that it disadvantages Mitt Romney, Pawlenty, and the centrist candidates.
All right, we'll be back to wrap it up in just a moment. In our last few seconds, our Crowley closer, as we like to call it.
Well, last week I tweeted that I am madly, deeply in love with the 2012 election cycle already, and one of the reasons is last week Donald Trump once again reared his head and suggested that President Obama's birth certificate might not be real after all. So some issues just don't go away.
Can you believe that?
Reared his head or reared his hair? Or reared his hair.
Oh, here we go.
Next week we'll discuss the hair.
So I remain
right.
madly in love with the
Yes, you
2012
do.
election
Exactly.
cycle.
And there'll be so many more things for you to continue that love affair coming up. Thank you for joining us, everyone, on this Sunday morning on To The Point. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.